So just to start, can you really explain what's been happening in the last month, especially with that 300-page report that Interim Chancellor Betsy Morgan sent you?
The outside investigators did I guess about a 2-month-long investigation, and then the report came, and that was last month, and I had the opportunity to look at that, and also the interim chancellor at UWL did, and then it's up to her, does she want to move forward with charges, and she did that, and made 3 charges that I engaged in potentially illegal, unethical conduct, that I violated the university information technology use policy, and that I failed to cooperate fully with the investigators. So I received that material, and then according to the state statute, Chapter 4, I have the opportunity to say, well, I would like a hearing to talk about these charges, and so I have made that request, and I want it to be an open hearing where reporters such as yourself can come and cover it, because we think it's very important that everybody knows what's going on.
And so those 3 charges that she filed, can you kind of break those down, why you think that those 3 particular charges were brought up? I have here it's the unethical and potentially illegal conduct. What do you think that could be referencing?
I think that they're going to try to say that there were things that we wrote about in our books that were potentially illegal. Now, the burden of proof is on the administration, is what the statute says. So I think they're going to need to do a little bit more than just say, well, you wrote a book. I don't think we want to be firing people for what they write in a book. The second charge, the failure to communicate with or to cooperate fully, with the investigators, they did contact me. Now, these are some pretty high-powered lawyers that were hired, and I don't know how much they're getting paid, but they said to me, well, we want to sit you down for 3 hours and put you on camera and basically interrogate you, and we'd like to do that at one of our law offices, which you could come to Chicago, you could come to Minneapolis, you could come to Madison. You know, that was pretty intimidating, so I said, well, I would like to have an attorney there to make sure, you know, I'm answering the right questions and so on. And so they said, okay. And then it took a while to find an attorney. There's an organization called FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. They said, we'll get you an attorney, but it never happened. And so the investigators, I said, well, why don't you send me the questions in writing and I'll answer them that way. They didn't ever reply to that. So they completed their investigation without me.
Okay. And I mean, how do you feel about them completing that investigation without you?
Well, I wish they would have asked me some questions in writing that I could answer. I mean, my understanding was that the whole complaint that President Rothman filed was about maybe I didn't file accurate disclosure forms that I have to file each year, which isn't true. So I thought they would want to ask about that. The report goes all over the place in terms of entirely different things, you know, and one of the charges is, well, you used your state computer to access pornography. You know, that's just not true, but again, the burden of proof is on them.
I mean, do you know why they would think that you were using state materials to shoot or produce your content?
I don't know why they would rush to that conclusion, because I did have a meeting with an attorney and an HR person before I was fired, and they said, we've learned about these videos and books, are they yours? And I said, yes, they are. And I explained we made these on our own time, with our own money. We were never paid anything for the videos in particular. The books, we made a little bit of money, but it was never more than $1,000 a year. So that's the requirement. And I thought I had cleared all that up. So it was a little surprising that that wasn't good enough for them.
What would you say is we've already talked about this before, but your overall reaction to people who might say that for a chancellor that this was unethical?
I don't know that I would call it unethical. I think we need to put it in context. I had announced that I was going to retire as chancellor, and we had a great 16 plus years. So, did everything I needed to do. And then we put some of our videos on the web, and there are millions of videos there. I mean, just YouTube is not a sex site, but there are 500 hours of video downloaded every hour. So we figured nobody's going to notice these videos. And then it was very surprising, I think, because we're a couple and we're sincere, and it's a little bit different from a lot of things. We were like, oh, 1,000 people watched it in a day. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. In just a few weeks, it was over 1 million. We were very surprised by that.
But I think, we can concede that it would be challenging to have a president or a chancellor of a university be known as a porn star, right? So that we understand that, and that certainly makes sense. I think the bigger issue is, what are faculty allowed to do on their own time?
I want to ask about that. Do you think, I would love to hear your opinion on what you think a more private position like a professor, faculty, do you think with producing adult content, with producing pornography, is that, still align with being with that role?
I think that what a couple does on their vacation, on their own time, with their own money, and on social media, that's their own business, and that shouldn't disqualify one from being a faculty member. And, I'll admit, you kind of don't know, well, how are students going to react? We've been out in the community, because I'm banned from campus right now, but we've been out in the community, and students have come up to us, and they're excited to see us. Mm-hmm. And they think this is really interesting. And so people are like, oh, I'd take a class with you, absolutely. So I think, there's no reason why I can't be a great teacher. I was before, and we've learned so much from this experience. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to talk about.
I was planning on asking this later, but I'll ask it now since it kind of already came up. As educators, what do you think you've learned from this experience that you would, bring with you into a classroom or to share with students?
It depends on the class. Mm-hmm. There are classes where people sign up because they're going to talk about sexuality. That would be maybe more in her field of psychology. My field of mass communication, it is more about what we've learned about media in the large sense. We've been interviewed by many, many people and different publications and video news and podcasts. It's been really fascinating to see how that all works, when you're really in the middle of it. I had read a lot of books about it, but not really lived it. And so there's a lot there. And then there are other things that are not even associated with this that I'm really interested in as a teacher, technology and how it has changed in just the 15 years, 16 years I've been chancellor. We didn't have smartphones in 2007. They were just coming out, the iPhone. Now everybody, that's their whole life. So there's just so much to talk about.
Well, and I think too, one of the things we'd like to have the opportunity to do would be to travel to campuses and just give talks, right? And what have we learned? What is it really like in the industry? What kind of processes do people go through, in making adult content? What are the people like, and then can we just please talk about sex in an adult conversation? And because, so many young people are learning about sex through watching porn, and that often doesn't represent what loving couples do in the bedroom, right? So
yeah, it's not reality at all. If it ends up that I am fired from my position, we will certainly go to any other campus that wants us to talk.
We'll kind of go back to kind of the beginning of this. So you said you were getting millions of views. Was that before this, the regents found out, or was that after?
Well, it's important to remember that when we put the videos on originally, they were just the videos with the two of us, because there are issues involving the rights. If you have another person, they have to fill out forms and things, and it's rather cumbersome. We do have the materials, but so that was surprising because we didn't know that anybody would really be interested in us.
But it was before the regents learned of anything. So that's kind of how they learned of it, is because somebody saw it and then said to somebody else, who probably told the regents, this is out there.
And so that was surprising. And then we had a decision to make, what do we want to do? I thought that when I had my meeting with the attorney for the UW system and the HR person and confirmed, I'd get a phone call or something from the system president or the regent president saying, we have an issue here and you need to do something about it. Maybe I need to, resign and just quietly, But they went and just outright fired me. And then it got all kinds of media attention. And we decided we were going to take the videos off of the free sites because we were like, hey, not everybody apparently who goes to a free site has our best interest in mind. Yeah. And that they are now on paid sites. And the region action and all the publicity has generated a lot of interest there. Yes.
So then when they're on those paid sites, then do you make income from that?
Yeah, we have. We didn't make any income. We didn't receive any income. It's important. This happened on December 27th when they fired me.
And the news broke on the 28th.
News broke on the 28th. And then in those couple of days, we started generating money, but we didn't get paid until January of 2024. So when I file my outside activities for this year, I will certainly have to note that income, yes.
And so it sounds like you guys had been making pornography for maybe around a decade before. Why did you decide to go public with it when it was more private before?
Joe had announced, as he said, that he was going to be stepping down as chancellor and transitioning into a teacher role. I had been in higher ed administration at several institutions over the past several years, and recently have had some really unpleasant experiences with colleagues, and I decided that I'm done. I loved the role of Provost Vice President of Academic Affairs, enjoyed what I did, had great teams that I worked with, but it just wasn't working out on other levels. And so rather than continue to pursue that career, we decided we'd move into another direction. So, and the other part of this is we do this cooking part of the show too, and I really enjoy cooking, and I have many of my own recipes, and I'm working on a cookbook, too. So that's fun.
It really was a question of, as Carmen has said, I had done everything I needed to do in my career. She's a little younger than me. She's worked at several places, and they've just had very bad leadership. And one of the schools hired her. She moved away there, and in like a year or two, they closed the entire institution and fired everybody. And so it's really just getting kind of weary, So we sort of said, all right, let's just experiment with this. I don't think we ever thought we were going to end up here talking to reporters about this, big deal.
No, or making any real money. I mean, that wasn't the purpose. It's nice that we can make a bit of money, but we don't really need it, and we understand that we're very privileged in that regard, because there are many people whose lives depend on making money. by producing adult content, and sometimes it's it can be very difficult, and so we want to make sure to respect that and their work.
So, going back a little bit to back to that public hearing that's going to be happening, that's going to be really focusing on taking your tenure away. And I just want to make sure I have this right. If they took your tenure away, would that also mean that you would lose your faculty position?
Oh, yeah.
Or could they? Okay.
That's the process is called process for dismissal of a faculty member. So there's no doubt about that.
Okay. And I mean, how would that impact you financially? How could that impact your retirement?
I think that the biggest challenge would be health insurance. And, that's why we do make a little bit of money from the videos on the paid sites that would pay for health insurance. But really, I mean, it's almost, my pension is about the same as I'll make as teaching, which the people at UW System have pointed out to me. Could say, why don't you just retire? There's a principle here. I mean, I think that this is now bigger than us. Mm-hmm. It's about tenured faculty. It's about academic freedom. It's about shared governance. So really, I don't want to fade away. We want to do the right thing here.
Do you know of anybody else who has maybe a similar position, maybe not chancellor necessarily, but academic leadership or even a professor that has gone through a similar situation like this?
We'll be in an airport and there's all people busy, and I'm pretty confident no one else is doing quite what we're doing, which is interesting because I think that's kind of what we set out to do, and we accomplished that. We just didn't know that it would be so controversial with some people. I got to be very careful on that because we've gotten messages of support from all around the world and from all kinds of folks and
people we know, people we don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say that from the comments that we get on the paid sites, they're comments that this is really special and really unique, and I don't see this kind of work anywhere else. So I am pretty confident that what we're doing is special. We certainly have worked with people who have had government jobs and create adult content on the side, and then they typically have moved out of those jobs and just focus on the content.
One performer, we didn't work with him, but we rented his penthouse apartment in downtown Los Angeles. He had graduated from MIT in engineering and been a very successful engineer at the Boeing company before all the current stuff, and then just decided, well, I want to do what I enjoy doing, and has been very successful in the adult industry. And it's amazing how educated people are. I mean, we've worked with people with degrees from USC, Cal Berkeley, Arizona State, Rutgers. Penn State, Rutgers, Iowa State. Yeah. I mean, people, I think, would be a little surprised at how educated and professional the people in the industry are.
Yeah.
Do you think going forward, we've talked about technology a lot, do you think going forward we're going to see more people in leadership roles kind of also be doing on the side adult content like this?
I don't know. I mean, it's not for everybody. This is our path that works for us. We do know that, we've had students write and say, I paid my way through college on OnlyFans. I had in a previous life, I rented apartments, and one of the young women that I rented to was a dancer. And that's how she made her living. So I think that there are people who work in the sex industry that we wouldn't necessarily expect to see there. right? And so I think it's more common than people would like to admit. I don't think it's as common amongst people of our generation.
No, there's a strong generational aspect to it. And, you think about it, I'm in my early 60s. When I grew up, you didn't have access to sexually explicit material. Today, anybody can go to their smartphone and go. So, I think we should be talking about that, like what the impact it is, and that's what we're trying to have that conversation. But also, people will change. Younger people will be like, well, what's the big deal? I don't know that we'll ever get to a place where people will say, well, it's okay for people in leadership positions to be openly sexual. But society changes, and 10 years ago, we didn't have legal sports gambling. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar thing. Marijuana is becoming increasingly legalized. You hear about therapists using psychedelic drug as in treatment. So I think people are changing. One of the best articles that was written about us was in Psychology Today, and it was totally sex positive and really like this is something that is a good thing. And we get more and more of that, So once you get past the kind of controversy, I think reasonable people, younger people, they're open to, talking about new things.
Well, and one of my former high school classmates texted me after the news broke, and she said, my friend Carmen's still setting fire to the world. And also she said, I'm a physician's assistant for women's health care, and I'm thinking, yay, a postmenopausal woman enjoying sex. And that's I think talking about that is important,
You guys said you started this more as just for fun, right? Yeah. And has it changed now, the purpose behind it? Is it now a broader goal behind the content?
Not the content itself. I think, and like I said, with OnlyFans and Loyal Fans, it's work. People have to work it, and you get requests, will you do this or that? And that's not who we are. We created this content for us, and then we're sharing it with others. But we don't create content for other people, we just do it for us. So that is staying the same. I think that what's changing is, our opportunity to have conversations like we're having today, and really try to help people understand what, the adult industry, what's legal, ethical, pornography, and also can we just talk about sex and what's healthy sex and healthy relationships, and what do those things look like? And it's not the same for everybody.
And another part of this is how many women are in leading roles and how that's changing, and there's more and more women. And one of the nicest parts of this was a woman who's been, she has a website for women, so that's the audience. She approached us and said, could I put one of your videos on our website? And we said we'd be honored, so that it's reaching an audience that isn't the traditional, male-dominated kind of thing. And so I think that's really gratifying that people see that we're doing something that, is not stereotypical. It doesn't involve somebody dominating somebody or violence or anything like that. I am just amazed that when I watch television, or the web, whatever we want to call it these days, how there's so much violence. But any kind of like real open sexuality, it isn't there. And I wonder what lesson does that teach people? Violence is acceptable and okay, but sexuality is not. That's problematic, and in our way, we're trying to address some of that. But people need to be open to the conversation. And we would certainly never force our
No.
what we're doing onto anybody. I mean, that was what was so stunning when we put some videos on sites where you would think people are going there for that kind of material, that somebody would turn that into a bad thing. Was really disappointing.
So I want to switch a little bit to just kind of more the personal life. How has it been in the community? I mean, have you had to change your life around at all? Or have you been able to continue living pretty normal lives despite kind of going viral in some ways?
Well, when the news first broke and it was so viral, I went into the grocery store and Joe waited in the car, you know. But since after a few weeks, things settled down, and you know, we go out and people will approach us, and every time somebody has approached us except once, it's been very positive. That, you know, in the grocery store, somebody might come up and say, you know, I'm behind you. I think you've done nothing wrong. We were in a restaurant and there were some students that were eager to get their picture taken with us, you know, and so it's been okay. That said, we've been taking some time to get away, to be in places where we're not recognized, you know, too. So just to get a break from that.
And I think part of the issue is how the university and the system reacted. I mean, they could have just said, okay, we don't think we want you as chancellor anymore, so we're removing you from that position. But then they said, well, we don't want you as faculty, and we're banning you from campus, and we're coming and taking stuff out of your office and requiring a police escort when you go back to get your personal things. I mean, essentially treating us like criminals. Wow, I mean, that just seems way overreacting. And then I don't know what signal that sends to people in the community. I think on campus, people were told, don't talk to him. I have not had any communication at all other than the real official email with the interim chancellor.
No other faculty members?
No. And there are people, just today, this morning, there was an event for someone who's retiring that I worked very closely with, and probably our best friend, and couldn't go. You know, I mean, that's wrong.
Yeah, I'm interested in, you know, you love education, you love being a chancellor. What has it meant to not be able to go to the campus?
It's hard. It really is. You know, I was there a lot. It's a big part of our lives, and then to so abruptly end that and put this cloud over it, like we don't want you to ever come back. Wow, you know, can we at least talk?
Yeah.
You know, we already kind of talked about Carmen. You've stepped away from higher education. So professionally with other work, this hasn't really had much of an impact on you, or has it?
Well, it hasn't, because I haven't been working. So since I left my last position, and I had done a little bit of consulting work and applied for a couple of other positions, and again, things were not going well. And higher education has changed dramatically in the last, you know, since he started as chancellor. It used to be that campuses could be fairly autonomous, you know, and people trusted the experts who were on the campus to say this is what our campus needs, and that's just not the case anymore. Boards are taking much more control of what happens, even though they're not educators, they're not administrators, they're lawyers and business people, and you know, so. And I find that their goals are not the same kind of goals that I would have as a leader. My style is to be very collaborative and say, you tell me what you need and how can I help you get there. And that's not what boards want in leaders anymore. They want people who say, you will do this. And I can't, that's not my style, and I won't participate in that.
So I'm interested to ask each other, how have you seen it impact the other person? So Joe, how have you seen this kind of viral moment impact Carmen, and Carmen, how have you seen this impact Joe?
I mean, this whole experience has brought us closer together than ever you can imagine. I mean, it's kind of, some days it feels like us against the world. I mean, it's really, so I don't know that I'd pick it for everybody, but it definitely brings us together, and that's wonderful. And Carmen's a very resilient person, and you know, we can handle the controversy. The hardest part is, you know, there are people in our families that are just struggling with it. And we understand that, but that's been hard on Carmen in particular.
Yeah, and I would say, for Joe, you know, the impact is, well, it's all consuming much of the time to be thinking about the report and the accusations and, you know, not being able to go to campus. And technically I have not been banned, so I could probably go, although I have not tried that. I don't think it'd be a great idea. But you know, that is all balanced out by when we get to have conversations like this, that's meeting our end goal. When we see people out in the community and they say, fight the good fight, we think, you know, we're behind you. You know, that's really refreshing. And so it's there are challenges, but we've got a lot of support.
If you wanted to just talk a little bit more about your reaction from family members, reaction from friends as well.
Well, in my family, there's kind of a split, and there are some people who are, you know, we're with you, and you know, we understand what you're doing, and there are others that are, you know, not in that frame of mind. And I mean, I don't know what I can say other than, you know, they have the right to feel how they're going to feel. I said, you know, in an email to some of my family, you know, please, if this comes up when you're out with people, you can say, we think they're a little crazy, and we've told them that, and that's okay. And you know, and we still love our families and know that they love us too. It just would be nice to have a little bit more calm dialogue like we're doing right now, you know.
You know, I'm an only child, and my dad is long gone, and my mom lives in the area, and she's in her 80s, and you know, so she's got friends that know of Joe and know now of what we've done. And initially, of course, this was an incredible shock for her. But she comes once a week, and we spend an afternoon together, and we have talked more about sex in the last 2 months than we have in my entire life, you know. And she is, like I said, initially she was very shocked, and she was, you know, had all kinds of strong emotions. But I've been very impressed by her willingness to engage in the conversation, and she's learning a lot. And you know, it's never going to be her thing, but. She did say that one of her friends watches the cooking shows on YouTube and thinks the recipes look great. So, yeah.
Oh, it's sweet, very sweet. And you guys already kind of mentioned this, but how has it really impacted your relationship?
Well, he's home all the time now.
That's true.
But that's great. And I would say, yes, it's brought us closer together because, you know, we've needed to support each other with the various challenges. But in a good way, you know, again, and I've said this before, you know, we're just excited to be able to share our story and help people understand and think about sex and sexuality in new ways.
And I don't think I need to say that there is no other woman, I think, that would be on this journey with me than Carmen. Yeah. And I know how lucky I am.
It's really sweet. So when it comes to the content, are you guys able to keep producing the content at the, I don't know if rate's the right word, but like you were able to before? Has it had to change at all since this came out?
Well, actually, we haven't done anything for, boy, it's coming on a year. You know, like we had made a series of videos, and we put the cooking element in it at one point, and we shot a bunch of those, and then we did just one with the two of us that kind of would be like sort of the end of a season of a show. And then that was the last one we did, and then now we haven't really thought about it too much.
I mean, typically we would produce about one video a year. So it wasn't like it was, you know, all the time. You know, sometimes it'd be a little less than a year between shoots, but typically one a year. And then, you know, like Joe said, there is a woman who runs a site. She's interested in perhaps producing some content with us, so we might do that. But we really haven't talked a great deal about it at this point.
So still up in the air. It could happen again. Would it ever be, we're not going to do this again?
Well, the curious thing, and we've not really talked about this very much, but when we were making the videos, nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
If we were to make one now, we'd be, I think, self-conscious, because we'd be like, people know. So, and that changes it, because really before, it was like making a painting in your basement that you just, what do I want to do? Now it's kind of like, well, what do people want? And that's never been really that interesting to us. I mean, other than the woman from the website is very interested in, well, you're a real couple, and you could just, what's it really about is, you know, intriguing.
Have you seen, you know, metrics change? I guess we already talked about how it was growing rapidly before, but how has it really, you know, maybe taken off since this all came out?
The most exciting thing for me, and this is me, the books are people are buying and reading them. And that's really like the end game, if you will, is writing and speaking, I think, is more important to us than video. But wow, society, people are much more interested in watching videos than they are reading books. I can tell you, I mean, the books, on a good day, you sell one or two. Videos, like the YouTube ones that are there's not a lot of sex in there because they don't allow it. Yeah, I mean, there's no sex. Those are like 500 views like every 48 hours. And then the ones where people are paying for them, you know, it's a pretty significant audience there. The thing of it is, though, is because we just do these videos. It's kind of like making a record album. It's the old days, you know, or well, like a book. You just put it out, and you're like, well, there it is. And then people, okay, I read that one. What's the next one? We're not sort of trying to make this into a career of making videos.
No.
And so why, you know, about the books, and that's like the big exciting thing, why is it so important to you that people are reading the books, if you want to talk about that?
Because I think the books, there's some wonderful ideas there that you can get into. I think that there are wonderful ideas in the videos, but people get kind of so focused on sexuality that they don't, I mean, there's some great conversations that we've had with people that we've interviewed that are in there. The cooking is really interesting. But the books, you can really get into what are we thinking and why do we do what we do. And we really have the opportunity there to a person can, you know, literally study that, and we're educators, and so that's exciting to us.
Well, and it's just like any other like book that's made into a movie, right? The book is just so much richer than a movie could ever be, because you can't get, you know, 500 pages in 2 hours and capture, you know, much of what happens in those 500 pages. And so I think the books give a richer sense of who we are, our journey, how we got here, and what we're about. Yeah.
So when it comes to the adult industry, there are some criticisms. People say that it can be a very dangerous industry, especially for people who rely on it financially, and also can promote violence against women. So I guess, what would you say, like, what's your response to those that say maybe this work is promoting a dangerous industry?
Well, I would say that there are sex workers who are exploited, and that's horrible, and we need to find ways to make that stop, right? That's just not okay. The legal pornography industry in no way supports or promotes, illegal sex work and maltreatment of people in sex work. So when we engage with other talent, we have to all get tested, and now for COVID as well. And you sign consent forms, and you have to prove, you hold up your driver's license to prove how old you are, and there's a video consent. I understand what I'm doing is making adult content. I'm not under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. So it's all very professional. And so, that world doesn't promote anything, like sex trafficking. And anybody who's in that world abhors sex trafficking as much as anybody else does, and wants to make sure that we do something about that.
And there's so much different content and situations. It'd be kind of like saying sports. Well, that's a lot of things, And so really all we can say is we stand by what we do and what we depict. And, there are some things that I think are very troubling that you see depicted. And I read an article in the New York Times the other day about choking and how young people are reporting that that's something that is happening in sexuality. And where did they get that? Well, from pornography, and that's very troubling. I mean, so that's why what we do, we think is very positive, and it's equal, and it's loving, and we'll certainly defend that. But yeah, there are a lot of things I would not want to defend. Now that industry, it's like any other entertainment industry. I mean, you've got people who are at the top of the industry that are very well paid, that are, having great careers. They have agents. They, are treated well. But sure, when you go down, to a real base level, I'm sure that's not very pleasant. And so I would not advise somebody to go into that industry until they really took a good look at, well, who are the people that you're going to be working with, and are they reputable top people? I mean, the people we've worked with have treated us just very, very well and are completely professional, honorable. But yeah, I think you couldn't say that about anybody. I don't think you could say that about any other industry.
So I'm switching back more now to the professional side of things. With how everything went down with the chancellor role, and now with what's happening with your tenure position, do you think what's happening is fair?
On the tenure position, absolutely not.
Do you want to say anything about the chancellor position?
Chancellor position, there's some ambiguity there. And I mean, I think they took a very extreme reaction. Now, and people, I don't know whether they believe me on this, but it must have been like a week or two before I was fired. I sat in a Board of Regents meeting, and they had a special session about freedom of expression and how important that was in a university. And they had legislators, both Republicans and Democrats, and everybody agreed we need freedom of expression, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it's controversial. That's what it's all about. And I genuinely thought, well, maybe there's the hope that they would say, we don't like what they've done, he's done, but it is free expression, and life goes on. But I guess that was too much to ask. But I still think when you really look at it, it's kind of hard to say those folks are serious about free expression if they can't accept, a couple exploring sexuality in social media.
Yeah. So, let me think. Lost my train of thought there for a second. I had a follow up and then completely just lost it. My bad. But when it comes to this hearing, I guess it's all hypothetical, right? We don't know how it's going to go, but are you confident that you'll have a fair proceeding, a fair hearing?
I think that the faculty will give me a fair hearing.
Absolutely.
The challenge is if you read the process, it goes, the chancellor, in this case the interim chancellor, can say, well, I don't agree with the hearing committee, so if they said we think he should keep his position, they can still try to fire me and take it to the Board of Regents. Now there would need to be another hearing. And so, we'll do what we need to do. I think that the burden of proof is on the administration. That's what it says in the process. So they've got to show, okay, here's what I did wrong. And if that is nothing more than publish books and make videos, that's not a strong case.
And are you considering getting an attorney for the hearing, or what's your plan?
I thought about that, and then I saw the report that was produced. And the UW system must have kind of unlimited financial resources. I mean, they've got 2 lawyers from a firm, and then other people at the firm worked on it, and then they hired forensic technology specialists, and there were 2 companies and several people. So I don't know what this is costing, but I don't have, we don't have that kind of money. And so when I saw the report, I said, I'm confident that they are not going to prevail. And actually, I look forward to the exercise because we're well prepared, and I'm ready to defend myself and ask a lot of questions as they attempt to prove something that we don't think ever happened.
And it's important that it's a faculty committee hearing, right? So it's not like a court of law. And so it would be much less formal than a courtroom would be. If we were in a courtroom, well, obviously we would say, yeah, we need an attorney, but we're not there.
So, I think if they decide, not to recommend, your termination, to keep your tenure, I'm assuming you would just continue to teach then, continue as a faculty member. But in the hypothetical where they did recommend that you are removed, your tenure is removed, what would be next? Would you stay in the Cooley region? What do you think would be next?
Well, that would take a lot to get to that point, but I don't know. It's really, at the end of the day, the regents have the ability to do anything they want to. But we're really excited about getting out and talking about what we're experiencing and, having good conversations. I mean, that's the thing. And I think that there are other campuses that would be very interested in having us speak and talk. And, I mean, if this had happened at Madison, it's hard to draw parallels, but I think like a faculty member at Madison doing the same thing that we're doing and that came out, I don't think they would get fired.
Yeah.
And I think people would be very eager, let's talk about this. It's just something about this campus, and and I've always found that kind of sad that people think, well, La Crosse isn't, up to it. La Crosse is up to it. Our students are great students. They have open minds. They can handle this.
Yeah. But, I mean, if they were to say, well, you're done with the universities, he will retire. and collect the pension. Like we said, the biggest challenge would be health insurance. And would we stay here? For the time being, we've bought this house about a year and a half ago, and we like it here, and we're close to my mom, and so that's important. Will we stay in the Cooley region forever? Probably not. We'd like to be someplace near a good airport.
Wow.
It's because we like to travel.
Used to be great. I mean, and then they took out Detroit and took out Minneapolis, and boy, it's...
Limited options, yeah. So professionally then, maybe the next step, if you cannot continue your faculty position, would then be going to other universities and speaking, and would you maybe consider doing more books? I know you said that it's, you're not making it like a series, but would that be something?
Oh, I think there's a great, we had started on a third book and then got about 80% of the way through, and then this happened, and it's very difficult then to just pick that back up because the whole ending changes. Right. Yeah. So we need to, sort of work our way through this, and there's a lot to write and talk about. It really is. It's interesting. I mean, again, I wouldn't say it's for everybody, but we're not bored.
No.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people that would be interested in reading that book and hearing your perspective. And I know I kind of already asked a similar question, but like I said, both of you are educators. What do you think, the lesson can be learned? What do you want to educate people about with this experience you've had?
I would just like to give people the opportunity, as you're doing, to ask questions. And it's like, what's this all about? And then see where that takes the conversation. I'm going to be 64 in the fall, and nobody works forever. And really, I really just want to be in some interesting conversations. And I think you feel the same way.
I mean, kind of like going back to my mom, when we would talk about things, she's like, I had no idea. I had no idea people, like we said this, article in Psychology Today, I had no idea anybody would be interested, and so that's kind of a consistent theme in her. I had no idea that this is how this works. I had no idea people would want to talk about this. I hadn't. And so that's, we want to have those kind of refreshing conversations, that people have their preconceived notions about the adult industry and about sexuality in general outside of the adult industry. Relationships.
Marriages.
And, could we challenge some of those preconceived notions and respect how people choose to express themselves sexually? It's all different for everyone, and there are many ways that people can engage in monogamous sex or non-monogamous sex, and sometimes some methods work for some people, others work for other people, and so it's just, could we just have that conversation and say that as long as it's sex between consenting adults and they're doing it the way they want to do it, that's okay, no matter what that way is.
So after all this has happened, is there anything that you guys regret, or would you still do everything like you have done it?
That question comes up throughout our lives, like particularly when we interview for jobs. People say, do you have any regrets? And I discovered, at one point, no, I don't regret anything. I might do something differently, or you make mistakes, but you always do the best you can with what you have. And as you can appreciate, this has all been really surprising for us on a certain level, and there's no roadmap that because it's never happened before. So you sort of like, well, let's do the best that we can. But I wouldn't change anything. I mean,
I wouldn't change anything. I do regret the impact that it has had on our families. That I regret that, but that's not regretting what we did, and there, like I said, we're starting to work through that. And with my mom, it's going surprisingly well. So, and the other thing is that I do have contact with some of my former colleagues that are retired at UWL, and I don't think we really appreciated the impact that it had on the university community. I have lunch with a friend, and she said that she had one of her former colleagues was, in another country visiting her mother, and in the paper, not in the language native to that country, there was Joe Gow was fired. So it said like literally around the world. And then my friend said, and my family asked me about it. And she's like, I just don't want to talk about it. So I regret that it has impacted some people in uncomfortable and awkward ways. But
the university itself, people say, oh, you hurt the university reputation and so on. I don't see it. And I say that because there's been other controversies involving sexuality, and it didn't hurt enrollment. And I think enrollment's going to be fine this fall. I think that young people, students, they want to be somewhere where they have the freedom to talk about things that matter to them. Like nobody wants to. I mean, that's the really kind of I don't know what word to use. Curious aspect of this. There are these other people deciding that, well, the students shouldn't hear this, or they shouldn't and it's like, what? Our students are adults.
That's right.
You come to college because you want to grow and expand and ask questions, and so that's really, I think, what's happening here. And I'm I think UW La Crosse will be more prominent than ever.
Yeah, I guess this is my last prepared question, but when you have people think about you, what do you want people to know about you, or to remember you for, to really think about when they think about you?
Well, what I would hope for the people think about Joe is that they can look back and say, University of Wisconsin-La Crosse was extraordinarily successful under his tenure. Enrollment grew, the budget was balanced, and unfortunately that seems to be, they're seeming to try to erase his tenure as chancellor. The chancellor portraits have all been taken down from the student union. And there was a recent article praising Bob Hetzel, the vice chancellor for administration and finance, and he deserves every bit of that praise. He has an extraordinary career at UWL. But there's no mention of anything that Joe did, and so that's, I would hope that people will come back around to that, to say we were successful, and in large part due to his leadership. For me, I don't know.
I mean, I think if people just said, hey, they were nice people, they did some interesting things, and they had the courage to, follow their hearts, and that would be fine.